And so with the final rule, that directs services to be integrated. And I'm still researching that because there can be some impact to that, to some providers who have programs where you have residential and your day program services in the same location. And we have some programs that have that. They have what would look like a campus. And so we're trying to navigate to see, well, what's the final rule? How's that going to impact? And will there be an exception? Which it seems to me, I mean, just as my personal opinion, and it won't hold water, but there should be an exception. I don't know that everyone can be in the community all day.
Right.
So or that that individuals who reside on a campus, that should have to change drastically in terms of the activities or the programming that they receive on that campus. So we're looking. But that is the future. That is the way forward in terms of community integration, having individuals have that opportunity to participate in their communities, whether it's through work, volunteerism, school, and of course living in their community.
That's what I'm wondering, like, because you live 24 hours a day and you're sleeping for some of it, and so as he's getting older and he's definitely, you can feel that shift and the desire for autonomy and the desire for creating a life that's, when I say independent, he needs quite a bit of support, but independent of always being attached to a parent or making your own choices. I mean, that's where self-determination comes in, right? And so I'm just trying to sort of understand, as far as supports, your life support. So there's the idea of maybe going to college or work training and so forth.
And
there's
support services that will support those outcomes. So when we first look at what are his goals, what does he want to do, and that can be, George and I were talking the other day. We were talking about what is it that everyone wants in this life? Relationships, something meaningful to do during the day, and a home.
Make a difference.
Right, the place that, and that's your meaningful, right? We're gonna, and where we lay our head at night, kind of the three big basics. And so looking at what his are, what are his goals, and then what are those support services that are needed through the regional center, through generic resources, or through private, whatever it may be, because sometimes some of them are maybe through a private source of funding like health insurance.
Right.
So we look at those, and then how do we plan to support someone to achieve that? And so in terms of living independently, there's supported living services available, and there's also independent living services available, just depending upon what the needs are.
Can you, in a nutshell, describe the difference between the two?
Supported living will provide support, and it can be habilitative and supportive, meaning you can have someone who's learning skills and being taught during a portion of the day, and then a part of that day, that service can be supportive, providing, actually doing some of the daily activities of daily living for the individual, say meal preparation, or trying to think of other things where they may not necessarily be teaching, laundry. So that service can be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's intended to meet the individual's needs at whatever level that occurs. That service also helps the individual. A few things, cannot live in the home of a parent in order to receive that service, and they have to live in a living arrangement that they own, rent, or lease, and they have control of that environment. So they can change their agency if they so choose and not change their living arrangement, right? That's how that service is configured. So the vendor or service provider can't have a fiduciary involvement in the living arrangement, because that could then impact whether or not they're able to maintain that living arrangement. So there's some guidelines that are followed there. Independent living services, that service is intermittent. It goes and provides support, maybe 3 to 4 times a week for 2 to 3 hours, and that service is much more habilitative, instructional in nature. and helps the individual make sure that they are, attending to all of those tasks that must be attended to in order to maintain that living arrangement. And they can help address issues with landlords, make sure that folks are getting their medical appointments scheduled, make sure they're, making their grocery list, getting to the grocery store, meal planning, meal prep, teaching all of those skills. So it's really just about the level of service.
Okay. So it's still someone, independent living services is still someone that's living outside of the home.
Although that service can be provided in the family home. It's not excluded from in the family home.
Yeah, Ruth, I was thinking along the lines of, work first, the final rule, coming down. And as you saw when you came in, and here in the room, we have some independent business owners.
Yes, it's fabulous.
And one of the things that, Jay Nolan has been known for is being, kind of a trailblazer, kind of a pioneer on things. And one of the things we've been talking about internally is sort of creating an opportunity for there to be like almost an incubator business. And how would Regional Center be able to come alongside something like that if you walked in and said, well, because it's not integrated because they're here and they may be working out of their home, but yet it is the desire of that individual and their skill set to start within a protected time, like, because there's lots of incubator businesses out there. Micro enterprise, and then carry it forward. Would that be a way? Would there be a way for Regional Center to come alongside that as we push that forward, because it's a real great opportunity?
I think so. We'd have to look to see how. I said yes. I think so. I said I think we'd have to look to see at the service code description and the design of how Jay Nolan would support the individual in entering into that micro enterprise. Because it certainly would fall within the domain of vocational services. Right. So we would just look at the design of it, and of course we'd have to look at that against the final rule.
Right.
And
because it's that in between kind of time.
I don't know that there's. So if we think about folks out in the general public who have home businesses, right? That's not. There's a lot of that where. Well, look, Steve Jobs started in his garage. Right? Apple, that started in someone's garage. So I don't know. I'm not sure if the final rule will be a barrier, but we would have to research it to see.
I think because we haven't completed the design, it's a concept we're talking about, but really knowing that we're so close to it, it's like it's right there. And we've had trailblazers already doing their own thing, like Grace and Hunter. Jeremy, but to provide a structure and a framework for them to start and then carry forward. I think that carry forward piece, the intended end result, meets the the final rule.
Right.
So how do we just take care of the in between to get there?
When I think about all of the online Etsy, I mean, if we look at individuals who are really they're working, they're successful. They're successful folks who are no longer doing their 9-to-5 desk job because they started Etsy and it's enough now that they're no longer. That's all they do now, and I know individuals just in my social circle that's become the case. It's amazing. So and I have a friend who was managing I think a coffee bean and tea leaf, and then started an online store business, and it just got to the point where no longer needed coffee bean and tea leaves. The online store, full time. It's just amazing how what the internet has it's a game changer. It's really changed employment.
It has, and created so much more opportunity for individuals to take that whatever skill set, whatever interest, whatever passion they have, and make it a successful enterprise.
So I just think we have to look at the final rule and see when we're looking at design that we're designing with that in mind.
Right. There you go.
That's just how we navigate it forward.
I think just to add to that, where it really works is that sometimes that layer of HR or those social roles that happen within a workforce is maybe difficult for some people, and getting creative about having your own business makes sense for people, and then you get to almost eliminate those barriers that happen often in employment.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
point.
I have a question, Ruth. Can you talk a little bit about self-determination? And I know we're rolling it out this year, and
Happy
what
to.
you see the long-term impact for people who are actually receiving services, as well as the provider community, because I see that as a game changer too.
Absolutely.
Right.
So is everyone familiar with self-determination? Do you want me to give you, or do we want just a brief overview?
That'd be nice, I think.
So self-determination is an alternative service delivery model offered by the regional centers. It's being phased in. The first 3 years, the program will serve 2,500 statewide. North LA has 184 participants that have been randomly selected. In order to participate in self-determination, one has to have a developmental disability. So it does not apply to our early start kids, because those do not tend to have a developmental disability as defined in the statute. Some do, it's very infrequent. And the individual cannot live in a licensed long-term care facility, which would be an intermediate care facility or a skilled nursing facility. So long as those criteria are met, the individual may participate, and it'll be open to everyone within 3 years of the date that the waiver application was approved. That's what our understanding is. June of 2018. So we're coming up on our first year of implementation. An individual has to go through an orientation, and then once oriented, they will enroll if they so choose. And once enrolled, they will have an individualized budget that they can use to select service providers to meet their IPP goals and objectives. Now, the difference in self-determination is that their service providers do not have to be vended. Under traditional service delivery, service providers must be vendored. So self-determination creates some flexibility. Now granted, there are some additional rules. Those services must be eligible for the waiver. So this program is contingent upon the approval of federal financial participation and is intended to be cost neutral. So individuals would have to, any service that's selected, it must support implementing the IPP, and it must be from the list of federally eligible or federal financially eligible services. That is a mouthful. So there are 3 categories for services. There's home, there's community, and then there's health and safety. So and there's a variety of services that are available. It's just not, it's the notion that participants can purchase anything they want is not necessarily accurate. So that said, individuals who participate may purchase services from a vendor service provider. So it's not that vendor service providers cannot serve individuals in self-determination. They certainly can. It's just, it would be, the accounting of that would be different, because the regional center would not be reimbursing through our traditional claim reimbursements, which vendors are accustomed to using. It would be reimbursed through a financial management service, which is the only required vendor service in self-determination. That is a requirement. So for providers, the one thing to know is that you can, in terms of your rate, you can negotiate rates for self-determination. It does not have to be the regional center rate. It's just, you can't charge the regional center more than what you charge another entity. So when you're looking at self-determination and serving individuals in that program, your rates need to either be the same, or you can negotiate higher if that's what it's going to take to serve someone, but you can't discount them because the regulation, if for the same service, right? So that's just a regulatory requirement. So that's your only watch out there, is that, self-determination can't be discounted because then it creates as regulatory issue now with your other, funding partner.
Right.
And what we're charged. But so that's how I see it. So also part of self-determination is this independent facilitator position. Now that can be performing that role can be an independent facilitator who is someone that's trained in the principles of self-determination and also person-centered planning, and that is paid for out of the individualized budget, or that person can provide that service free of charge. So the only requirement is that for regional center funding, let me explain this. At the initial phase-in, because of the amount of time it's taking to get all of the program into place, the department has authorized the regional center to purchase person-centered planning in advance of enrollment in the program. So we're doing that through traditional POS, which means we have to gather information about the rate, the provider, and proof of that they've been trained in person-centered planning, because that's the statutory requirement. So, and then we can purchase that. That's only for this initial phase, and hereafter, it will be purchased out of the individualized budget. And the individualized budget does not increase to cover the cost of the independent facilitator. Statute does not allow for that. Do you know the individualized budget can be increased if there's an unmet need? And that can be assessed and then added to the budget. Let me think. The budget's based on the last 12 months of expenditures. And if we have someone who doesn't have prior expenditures, the regional center would have to assess what would it have cost to serve the individual under traditional service delivery using the average cost paid per service, calculate that over 12 months, and establish that budget. And then we certify that that's what the regional center would have expended had that individual been in traditional service delivery. So that's sort of the program.
And why would a individual choose self-determination over traditional?
I would think it would be an individual who had not found vendored services that could meet their needs. So I would think the individual would be looking for other service options that did not require vendorization, or it could be an individual that where vendored services could meet the needs, but maybe it's that the vendored program is having difficulty with retaining staff, and so staff turnover is they're feeling like this program could, but there are issues. And let me give an example. And this is a very real issue, and just one thing that I want to share before we end our time today, and that is the service system. Providers have not had significant rate increases in 10 years. And it is a problem. It's very challenging. And we're seeing the impact in various areas of our service delivery system. I'll share with you Keolis, our vendor transportation provider here in the Valley. Because of the rate that we are able to reimburse, and the fact that it's not enough for them to compete with Metro, their drivers, they've become the training ground for Metro. So they hire drivers, they get them licensed, they train them up, and then they go work for Metro because Metro pays $1 or $1.50 more an hour. And so they lose their drivers. And while we want to be able to reimburse at a higher rate, we're limited by statute and regulation as to the amount that we can reimburse. So it's like for Keolis, like being between a rock and a hard place. And so the impact of that is that their drivers either leave or they can't retain enough at one time to cover for when drivers call out, get sick. And so we have route cancellations. Almost every week I get notified of a route cancellation. And on Good Friday there were 7 that morning. And what that means is every individual that was relying on that transportation to get to their program either stayed home with a caregiver who who now either took the day off or called into work and said, I'll be there, but I'm gonna be late because I've gotta get my, someone to program, and then I'm gonna have to leave early because I've gotta get them back home. So the impact to the individuals and to families and caregivers is significant. And so you probably all are very much aware of the advocacy and the rallies and all that the regional centers and the service providers are doing together. And I'm here to tell you, we need all of you as well. Legislators need to hear from the individuals who are directly receiving services the impact of the lack of service availability. Now, I just got a memo yesterday that I have a day program that because of they're not able to retain enough staff to meet ratio. As you know, because of programs who are licensed, community care licensing, they have to have minimum staffing requirements. They're having to now put individuals on a 4-day schedule. So they send a notice to families saying, please be aware that 1 day per week your individual cannot come to program until we're able to stabilize our staffing. And these stories, they keep coming. We've been hearing this. And so a good news is that we've gotten the attention of the legislature. So, we're LA and the legislators are up in Sacramento. And what I'm hearing from our legislative advocates and our consultants is that because they're in Sacramento, they don't necessarily really, they may not necessarily be so aware that there might be issues in Los Angeles. But the advocacy has been so consistent and so fantastic. The rallies, we do have the support of some assembly members. Holden and Frazier, really big supporters that we're getting the attention of folks. Holly Mitchell, although she's a budget committee chair, so she has to be, she's got to be objective, right? Neutral. That said, she's aware of our system. She's aware of the issues. Henry Stern, boy, we've been out to his office. I would say he's a supporter. So, and Hertzberg, absolutely. So we're on the radar. They know that the system needs help. It's just, the question is, what kind of help? And I can share that some of the feedback we're getting is that the legislature's looking to tie whatever they do to the rate study, because they've expended a significant amount of money on Burns and Associates to get that rate study completed. And just so you know, it's got some issues, right? Everyone knows. There are some issues there. So we really, providers have done such a fantastic job of getting very specific information that we've compiled from our provider community, and we've got it back up to the department. And that'll get up to the legislature about where we need some adjustments, right, and how that formula is being set. Because the intention is for Burns and Associates to create a formula that can just be updated over time. And so we need to make sure we get that formula right. It is critical to our system. So all of that to say, we need you to write letters and contact your local representatives about this system and the fact that this system makes a difference in either your life, the life of someone who's important to you, or the life of someone that you serve. That really, emails. We know legislators look at their emails when they have to vote on an issue. I learned that from Senator Wilk. Yeah. How he decides when he's not sure about an issue. He goes through and he runs, and he has his field rep sort them by for and against. And he says, if I'm not familiar with the issue, that's how it's decided. Fantastic, he's representing his constituents. So, advocacy.
And on Twitter.
Yes.
It's a game changer nowadays to have that kind of, you're bypassing all their staff and you're getting straight to your representatives when you
so
on
it's
Twitter.
So important. And do know, look at our website. We are looking at drafting a letter and putting that up to be used, because right now they're doing the hearings May 2nd, May 9th. If anyone can get to Sacramento on May 9th, you have an opportunity. 1 minute. I'm told that if you go for 2 minutes, they won't take the mic from you. Testify.
Kimmy has a question, maybe twofold related to this. She's wondering if there's something at regional centers that's like an advocacy group of people who receive services that she could join. Second question, can she talk to her counselor about getting some help to go to Sacramento?
Getting help to go up for the hearing.
Like some help funding the trip so that she could go? She could talk to her we've talked about that as the center and talked about how could we do that. I'm not sure under traditional, we were trying to look at it in another way, because travel doesn't meet the statutory definition for regional center services. It's not specialized. So funding things like airline tickets, that would be a challenge, because as you know, it would have to be the statutory definition guides our funding guidelines. Yeah.
So, but that said, let's not give up on that idea at all. I love that she wants to go.
Yeah.
And so, let me make a note to myself, because it's something we've started to talk about, and how would that be done? We're just not, we're not sure about that funding piece of it.
And what about do you guys have an advocacy?
I wanted to say, thank you for saying that again.
Yeah.
We do, so we have a consumer advisory committee, and that committee sets priorities about what they wanna do. And advocacy would be a great priority for that committee. And I'm not sure if that's their committee right now, right? I know they're very much focusing on education. And so they have speakers that come in and they might also be doing some community outreach. Advocacy would be a fabulous priority. So we can get her information afterwards. Let me get her name, and then I can follow up, and we can get her information about when those meetings occur.
That'd be great.
All right. Another inquiry? Vicki?
Before my son went into supported living, he had a woman come one day a week for several hours, 5 or 6 hours, to teach him independent living skills. Do they still provide that at Regional Center?
Yes, absolutely.
Because that was really valuable, because as his mother, I wasn't able to teach him as effectively as somebody that was not his mom, who always told him what to do. So I just wanted to know, and it's a good preparation for when they're, and